All right. Like I said before, I really do believe in getting started on time. I want to thank you for coming today to be part of the panel. And today's discussion is advancing racial equality in schools. And what happens is I do a little overview of some of the things that I found, and then I stop the overview and I open it up for questions, responses, suggestions. What we really want to do is we want to move away from, we want to move into using different technologies in order to improve the overall quality for all students. And so one of the ways is to come together with a strategic plan instead of just gathering together and not have a focus. And the problem I have is that a lot of times it leads to destruction. And I don't agree with destroying anybody's property. So just a little bit about myself. I'm Dr. Campbell. My doctorate degree is from Rowan University. I've been in education for 24 years and counting. I've authored 12 books. 5 of them have been marriage, 7 of them on the topic of racial equity. I've been a racial equity consultant for 12 years and counting. I also have a course called, after the name of my book, Promoting Positive Racial Teacher-Student Classroom Relationships. And it has been approved by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And so it's a 12-week course. And so I'm really excited about that. And so at the end of this the today's session, I'll tell you about a contest we're having, and I'll give all the rules for that contest. So racial equality. Now, according to the definitions that I found, racial equality in schools is the belief that students, or the belief that individuals, regardless of their racial characteristics, are morally, politically, and legally equal and should be treated as such. And so I took the same definition and I used it for racial equality in schools, but it just points to the belief that students, regardless of their racial characteristics, are also morally, politically, and legally equal and should be treated as such. But the question is there racial equality in our schools? And if we look at the racial disparities, according to American Institutes for Research, Black students are 3 or 4 more times more likely to be expelled or face multiple suspensions when compared to white students. Also, U.S. News Report reported that the average reading and math scores indicate that there's a difference, there's a disparity between Black and white reading and math skills. We also look at special education. And in special education, actually, American Indians are more likely to be involved in special education services, followed by Black, Latino, white, and Asian. But what really interests me was the reasons that Blacks were put into special education. And the top 2 reasons were intellectual disability and emotional disturbance. And I thought that was interesting, especially the emotional disturbance, because schools have moved towards social emotional learning. Now, what I do know about social emotional learning is that it's been around for quite a while. And it was around 17 years ago. And one of the things that puzzles me is why we doing this again, and it didn't work the first time. But that's a whole nother strategic plan. So we also have, when you consider taking the AP exams, white students take more AP exams, and they also pass more AP exams, which is another interesting thing about the equality of race in schools. When we look at graduation rates, Blacks and American Indians are at the bottom of the list. And what this equals to is the racial wealth gap. And the statistics say that if you're white, non-Hispanic, The average for that family is 171,000, but for Hispanic or Latino, it's 21,000, and it's even lower for Black or African American, which is 17,000. And it's my belief that our school system and the way we educate children directly impacts this statistic right here. So I looked at a school, Mountain View Los Altos High School District, and they came up with a strategy to promote racial equity in their schools. And they came up with two focuses. They wanted to mandate equity training for their staff, and then they wanted to have a mandatory ethnic studies class for their incoming freshmen. The problem I had with the mandating staff equity training is, first of all, to say that they're saying one size fits all, because they've included race, social justice, LGBTQ, and anti-racist and biased practices. And I just don't think you can muddle them all into the same fruit basket and treat them the same way or give them the same type of training and think you're going to come up with a different result. So I think that's one problem that they're going to have with their plan. Secondly, the mandatory ethnic studies class for incoming freshmen. Now, when you talk about ethnic studies, you're talking about all the ethnicities. There are 650 ethnic groups in 190 countries. I see you laughing. There's no way that they can cover that in a semester. It'll probably be a semester class. There's no way they can do it. Also, ED Source, which is a nonprofit journalism website, what they reported was there was another school district that was trying to implement an ethnic class, and they got some backlash from the Jewish population. And they said, it didn't reflect what they thought, how the interaction between them and Palestinians should be displayed. They think it should include the Sikhs, the Armenians, and the Jewish Americans. So they're taking a melting pot theory, and the melting pot theory has been around for quite some time, and it has not worked. And so we got to do something different. So I've thought of a couple of goals for advancing racial equity in schools. I think, first of all, we have to shift the perception that some white teachers may have regarding Black kids. So I used to be a family therapist, and I used to face this all the time. I would have a young Black male, young Black female, and they weren't doing well in school. And so the first thing that I would teach them was how to fold their hands. Because what happens in education is most kids who are in the self-contained model, they get in trouble during transitions. They don't get in trouble when they're involved in the content. And so that's what I used to teach them. When you're in transition, fold your hands. And a lot of times what the teacher will say, and I've seen this happen, the teacher will say, oh, I like the way so-and-so is sitting. And then the next thing you know, all of them have their hands folded because they want that positive reinforcement. And so a child, if you give them the right tools, you can actually shift the perception that that white teacher may have. Also, what I did with the young people was I understood in a self-contained class, there were like 5 different sessions that they would have during the day. And this one has 7, I believe. And so I would set it up like a round robin, and we would play 5 different types of games. And sometimes they were card games. Sometimes they were just games that they knew how to play. But in between the games, I would have them sit and fold their hands for 5 minutes. And so now what I'm teaching them is how to conduct themselves in the class so they continue to shift that perception. And so this is something that families can do. I mean, you can go to the dollar store, you can get a pack of cards, a deck of cards for $1, And I saw somewhere on Google where there's like 42 different child games that you can play with your children. And so, this is something that parents, no matter what their economical level is, they can do this. So that then our kids are shifting that perception. I also, for the older children, and I am a former high school math teacher. And one of the things I believed in was note taking. And I believe for the older children, sixth grade and up, I think they should be taking notes. So it does two things. It first of all validates that the teacher is teaching what they're supposed to be teaching. And if you're taking notes, normally you're about 30 seconds behind the teacher. That means you don't have time to mess up and start trouble because you're taking notes. And so the parent every day should be looking at those notes, asking them, what did they learn? And the notes is the evidence. And so the other thing that parents can do to get them to practice is if they have a video game, they can watch a video game and take notes on how the video game is run. And so that gives them practice. They could take notes of TV shows. They could take notes of what they're hearing as far as the music they listen to and the lyrics. And then, of course, you want to provide them rewards. But my kids, when they were in my classroom, 20% of my grade was their notebook. And that's why I didn't have all those problems, because they were too busy trying to take notes. Also, what I did was if I had parent-teacher conferences, the first thing we did was opened up the notebook. And we would look and say, okay, well, let's see what they have. And if they had everything that they were supposed to have, it reflected their grade. But when they didn't have their notes, and it was hilarious because when they didn't have their notes, I always saw the parent grabbing the kid by the ear and walking them out the door. And I thought that was so funny. And they would come to school the next day and they would sit there and they would take notes. So, and that's something that a parent can do. You can train and teach your young person to take these notes in class so they never get behind. Also, we have to shift the perception of the child. There is so much media coming at Black children that is negative that they have to hear something positive during the day. And so one of the things I found this poem, and it says, "Hey, Black child, do you know who you are, who you really are? Do you know you can be what you want to be if you try to be what you want to be? Hey, Black child, do you know where you are going, where you're really going? Do you know you can learn what you want to learn if you try to learn what you can learn?" And so this is also something that a parent can do every day. I remember growing up as a child, my mother used to call me Dr. Derek. Yes, and she used to call me that all the time. And so now here I sit today as Dr. Derek. And so, a parent, they can speak positiveness into their children. And then, because most children look up to their parents, they start to want to manifest what their parents have spoken into them. And of course, there's a lot of other affirmations that parents can use, but this is something they can do. And even if they don't read on a high school level, they can have the child reading it to them. So this is something that can happen, but this will help out the young people. And so the third goal for the strategic plan is training in racism and student achievement. Everybody wants to talk about social studies. Everybody wants to talk about what happened in the past. What I care about is, are they achieving? And are they achieving in mathematics? Are they achieving in language arts? We know even from Asian children who do very well in life. I think their median income is higher than whites, and that's because they are so good in math. And so I think we have lost focus when we start talking about advancing racial equity in school. It needs to focus on academics. Now, of course, we can talk about what happened in the past, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, I need for kids to come out, and I always used to tell them in the classroom, I need for you to be smart so you can contribute to my Social Security. That's right. So I think we have lost focus in our schools. We need to focus more on student achievement. And one of the unique things, I'm in New Jersey, one of the unique things about New Jersey is they actually have a statute that says that the school boards are supposed to provide training to all staff members in regards to racism and student achievement. And I think that needs to be national. Let's talk about what's going to make this country better. And that's going to be a more intelligent population of children who eventually become adults that run this country. And so goal number 4, they talked about an ethnicity class. I believe that freshmen is too late because usually they're 14, they're 15 years old, they're coming out of the 8th grade, they're angry about something. It doesn't matter what eighth grader there is, they're angry about something. Why not emphasize ethnicity at every grade level? They can also, because a preschooler can learn about ethnicity all the way up. So then this is not something new to them. This is something intertwined into our system. And this not only will benefit Black children, but this will also benefit white children. One of the things that we have a problem with is we have school-age shooters. And a lot of them are angry because all of a sudden they find out things are not as what they thought they would be, and they want to go kill people. And so that's why I think you got to start pre-K. I don't think you can wait until freshman year of high school. I think you also schools have to do an instructional audit. One of the unique things about the situation we're in with the pandemic is that a lot of the instruction is didactic, and it's the teacher and all the kids in front of the screen. But that doesn't work well for Black children. They work in groups better, and they love doing performance-based projects because it requires them to move. It requires them to do something different. And so I think that has to happen as well. I think schools have to look at their books. Now, I'm a former K-12 math, pre-K to 12 math supervisor. And I used to look at the books, and sometimes the word associations with color were always negative. If it was Black, if it was white, it was always positive. I think schools have to take a closer look at that because you're intertwining racism and you don't even know it, I also think you have to look at the names that are used in the books because you don't see a Shaniqua in a preschool book, but you should, so that's something to look at. The other thing is the ethnicity class. I think when they start, they should only use the major ethnicities. Let's don't muddle the pool together and talk about everybody else. And even if you look at our most recent census, it indicates that there are only 3 races: white, Black, and American Indian. And so that way, if we stick to that, then we can develop a better curriculum. So I could go on, but I'm not going to hash that point out. So before I open up to the panel, I just want to talk a little bit. We defined racial equity in schools. We talked about the disparities for Blacks. We looked at a case study. I think the goals need to be to shift the perception of teachers, white teachers and Black teachers, shift the perception that Black students have because of the media that they're getting daily. We talked about the staff racial equity training, and I think that the ethnicity class needs to be pre-K to 12. And so now let me tell you about the contest before I turn the presentation off. So on the website quarantineracism.com, we have a forum, and it's called the Quarantine Racism Forum. And if you make a suggestion for next week's topic and we use your topic, I will send you one of these free t-shirts. And we actually had a winner last week, and he got the one that was in the lower right-hand corner. And so it's the process for the quorum is really very easy. You can sign up with your Facebook credentials, or you can use your own email, and you can start your own topic, or you can look at some of the topics that are already on there. And so we'll meet next week. I do this every Thursday, 8:00 p.m., same time. I like to always send out an invite. If it's something you want to be involved with on a consistent basis, just send us an email and we'll make sure you get an invite. We're at moreinfo@quarantineracism.com. And so let me stop this share so I can open it up for the panel. Okay, and I will unmute everybody. I think I have to ask you to unmute. Let me see something here.
Yeah, I did. I unmuted.
Okay, and I see there's another person on, a few other people. You can unmute yourself as well, I believe. Oh, here it is. Okay. And so would you like to give any feedback or are there any questions for me?
I agree with a lot of what you said. This is my 31st year. I'm a classroom teacher.
Okay.
And I am one who I teach in a very rural area. I am hugely into civil rights. I'm a little bit of an activist. So my entire career, throughout the month of January and February, and usually I stretch it into March, every bit of my content revolves around, it starts with learning about Dr. King, and then I take it from there to like Ruby Bridges, the Little Rock 7, whatever. And I do various exercises because I live in an area where our Black population, now I'm a 6th grade teacher, it's increased, which is good, but it's maybe like 2 at the most in a class. Our Hispanic population has greatly increased. It's a little more like 4 or 5 per class. But when I first started teaching, there might have been 2 or 3 Spanish or Black kids in the school. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I wanted the people from this area. I never really wanted to come back to my hometown, but I thought if I did, then it was going to be my job to open people's minds a little bit and like stop the racism that is rampant through this type of area.
Well, let me ask.
So I've done a lot of those things that you said. Like everything that you said, like makes me feel good because like I've done a lot of that.
Now, are you tenured?
I am.
Oh, okay. So that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Well,
but believe me, I went through some trouble.
That's why I asked you where you tenure, because it happens. Yeah. It happens a lot of times when you're trying to do the right thing. But let me ask the panel a question. Anybody can speak if they please. What might happen if there's an ethnicity class for each grade level, pre-K to 12?
Can I speak?
Absolutely, Richard, absolutely.
So I moved to the U.S. of Arms and Racism, as I call it, in 2008. This is my nickname for this place. I used to daydream about winning the lottery and moving to the U.S. Now I'm daydreaming about winning the lottery so I can move back to Canada.
Okay.
It's not, this is an angry country. I don't know at what point in time on a timeline did this place become such an angry country. It's not what I thought it was going to be. I was just, as a matter of fact, I was just talking to my friends on Facebook. You know, they want to come down and visit me, and I said, don't. It's not worth it. I have friends who are Black. I have friends who are Greek and Black. I have friends who are Lebanese. I'm Jewish. Nobody gives a crap where you're from. I don't understand Americans' preoccupation with classifying people. the other side of it too, and please let me finish. I got to keep my mouth shut because my wife's family is all Ivy League. I went to McGill University. It's ranked in the 30s worldwide. My professional accounting title, everything, all in, is $3,000. I'm tired. The U.S. has $1 trillion student loan debt, and I don't see Americans getting any smarter generation after generation. Education should be attainable to any willing and able student who wants to attend school, not the student loan when they're leaving with a normal education, not a subpar education, but something, a proper education without a $100,000 debt. It's criminal. Education is the key to squashing ignorance, which is a key to squashing racism. I don't get it. Why is, I was looking at this article on Yahoo that had the top 20 high schools in the US and the cost. One of them was 56 grand. The article started off with how great the basketball team is. I wanted to tell that school, are you out of your effing mind? Because you know how many kids have hoops, I called it hoops and dreams, and nothing to go back on if they can't throw a basketball. Get that out of your head, that sports is more important than education. It's like joining the Air Force and less than 1% fly. I don't get it. It pisses me off to no end. The other side of it too, and there's some things at work that I've never ever experienced anywhere, because we just don't have the same social issues. So I don't know what's different here, but there was a black girl in the department that I was working on, and I'm telling you, I mean, I would hug her and I'd joke around with her and all that because that's nobody, you know, nobody's offended. But I'm telling you, so many times in a meeting, I don't mind playing the race card. I've never heard that before. I mean, to actually say that in a professional office in a meeting, and believe you me, I mean, you don't know me from a hole in the wall, but my family died in 1999 and 2000. It's been my mantra ever since to make at least one person laugh every day. So I joke around because we're not around long enough to take everything so damn serious. But this country is imploding. The key is education. And you know what? I'll tell you something. I worked in France, Germany, Puerto Rico, across Canada, and most of the east coast of the U.S. And now I call this place Redneckville, where I live, Loxahatchee, with all the lifted trucks, the stupid tattoos that everybody and their grandmother has, and the Confederate flags running around on the trucks. Then again, I used to watch the Dukes of Hazzard, never look twice at a Confederate flag until I moved to your country.
Well, what I want to say is, and I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. I think that's one of the reasons why it's important for people to come together and talk about some type of strategic plan, because
it's hard. It's still, and that comes from the top. And maybe Biden can do something. It comes from the top, because right now it's still going to be bipartisan. The key is education to quash ignorance. And I have a perfect example. I worked for an Indian company in Montreal. I moved to Loxahatchee. We had these Indian neighbors, and they were irritating me, and because they were putting plants right by our fence line and without consideration pumping water onto our land. But here's the thing, and I caught myself too. It's like, these Indian people, blah, blah, blah. And then I started speaking to them. You know what? I like them. The problem was we weren't communicating.
Okay.
And I like them. As a matter of fact, I also learned that their kids are at Ivy League schools. Now I like them more because I used to walk around with my McGill t-shirt. Am I an elitist? No way. I struggled. I had ADD. School wasn't easy. My parents were background Hungarian, both Holocaust survivors. So the stuff that I went through with school wasn't easy at all. So,
like I said before,
so I appreciate education. I appreciate what you were saying on LinkedIn, and I just had to say that this preoccupation with America classifying people is based on an illusion that classifying people will make things better. Has it?
Well,
no.
I think I know. Like, I'm going to interject here a little bit, because
Please.
I have taught first grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, all within 31 years. And what I do know is the ethnic teaching might not be important for the white kids, but it's important for the non-white kids because
It's
it
important
empowers
for
them.
everybody.
Right.
It empowers them. And
I don't want to hear white or black. Everybody, this is, I don't want to hear white or black because I didn't grow up that way. That's your gig. And education is important to everyone, black or white. This is my problem here. You're hitting it. I don't care. You know what? It's you have to have a solid foundation. You have to have parents that care. There's a lot of damage.
You do have to have parents that care. You do.
It took decades.
I think you have to also
break this country.
I think you have to also equip parents too.
Right. I get it.
Because one of the things that happens in the Black community is because the family is divided, you have this Black mother who's working 12, 14 hours a day, who really does. And then when she gets home, she's probably the one who's cooking, clean, especially if she has little kids. And so how do you better equip her? And that's kind of why I go into different strategies that they can utilize so that this turns around. Now you said you also said something else interesting. You talked about the separation in regards to the different races. From what I understand, that is something that didn't start until 1619. But because of some of the atrocities that have happened, I don't think we can get around it right now. But
we should never get around it because we should never forget it. Getting around it is not. That's not the path.
But if we teach people to be successful, then it fades into the background. You know, let's talk about you for a minute. You said you were Jewish. You were part of the Holocaust, and so Jewish people
were not me.
Your parents were, but Jewish people have made great advancements, and
Jewish
because they have
also
made great advancements, you don't see them protesting. You see them doing things like purchasing wine factories and purchasing businesses and stuff like that. And so this is what we have to position all children to be able to do. And for some reason in this society, it doesn't happen as much for the historically underserved children. And that's what everybody wants. Everybody just wants a fair shot at it. We're not asking for a handout.
It's not a level playing field. I totally agree.
Yeah, but we have to. But even though education doesn't provide as level a playing field,
there's no guarantee.
There's no guarantee. But when we start having different discussions, at least children have better choices to make.
Sure.
And right now, if you look at, I don't know when you came on, but if you look at all those statistics that I talked about, it looks like their choices are not there even from preschool. And so as an educator, and the one thing I understand, and I work with educators all day long, people don't go into education to deny children opportunities. They just, you don't go into education for that. And so there's something else that's underlying, and that's why I talked about the textbooks. That's why I talked about the languages that's being used, and then I talked about the strategies for parents. So
you don't go into education. The presumption of going into education is that you truly believe that you're going to make society better by educating what will be the future. However, how many times have we seen teachers throwing kids around? At some point in time, a switch, and it goes back to what I was saying. Again, this is an angry country. I don't know at what point in time did it become angry, but everybody's angry. I mean, I don't know at what point in time. I have asked Americans, as a matter of fact, because I buy and sell a lot of stuff on eBay as a supplement my income, and I'm over the weather. I was just telling my friends in Montreal, give me -20, but give me a proper culture, because I've had it with Florida. This is the dumbest population I've ever been immersed in.
Okay.
But I just, I don't get it,
Well, I think one of the things is we can't, as people who really want to see children get the best, you can't give up. You know,
Right.
The teachers have given up. A lot of and not for nothing. I mean, they're unappreciated, and you see these teachers who are unappreciated taking out their anger on kids, and you see it time and time again. And unfortunately,
well, we get rid of them. Those teachers, we get rid
not
of them
easily,
quickly.
but
Yeah. So
but
that's not an issue.
easy.
But I think
You
one
know,
of the things that you're speaking to is we have to find a way to better choose teachers.
and
Because,
police and anybody else in authority,
well,
including the government.
I'm going to stick with teachers because that's like my lane.
I
staying
get
right
it.
there.
I totally understand it, but you know what I mean.
But what I was going to say was, you get a young teacher who's 22 years old, straight out of college. They buy a car, they buy a house, they have 2 or 3 children. They look up, they're 35 years old, and they realize they don't even like kids. And you get that
since the
that all
pandemic,
the time.
Since the pandemic, I've just been saying I want my kids to go back to school so I can love them again. That's my joke for the day.
Yes, well, the pandemic has definitely made us revise who we really gravitate to or not. So
But
I really appreciate
so.
your comments. But let me ask another question. So I want to go back to that ethnicity class. What type of patterns or themes could emerge in the schools from an ethnicity class?
You'd have to invite the teachers to take the class as well.
Okay.
True. That's true.
Well, they would be the ones
there.
They would actually be the ones developing the curriculum, and they would be the ones who would be teaching it. But I'm speaking more about the culture of the school and the impact on the different children.
What would happen is, like I said before, it empowers all people, not just some.
Okay.
When they feel noticed and respected and can identify with something that everyone has to learn about, not just them. Like, you don't just give the 3 Black kids a report about Wilma Rudolph, the 3 white kids a report about George Washington. The entire class needs to learn about Cesar Chavez or Ruby Bridges or George Washington. But you don't just empower the Black kids to learn about the special Black people. Everyone has to learn.
Right.
And then it empowers the importance of it all.
I think the other pattern that will happen is you don't have as much frustration from children and their parents. You know, Mr. Richard, you said something interesting. You talked about the kids who want to play basketball and that's their dream, and only 1% of them actually make it. But those kids are looking to be noticed.
That's right. And I'm a head track coach, and sports are important.
How about getting noticed through developing a cure for cancer? Unfortunately, let me finish. Unfortunately, the doctor who would actually find a cure for cancer can't fill a stadium with 60,000 people, as opposed to some clown who's throwing around the baseball.
That's true, but there are children that if they don't have the sport to keep them wanting to achieve in the class, it's a good incentive and motive. And I'm the head track coach for 31 years, and I see what sports can positively do for the kid. We don't push you're going to become a pro. We push you're going to use this as your path to keep your grades on track, to be able to be on the.
And you can also use it. Also, there's a requirement. There's a requirement that you have to have a C average.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so
you
also they could possibly get a scholarship. And so now they're not going into student debt.
I get that. Here's the other side of it, though. How many teachers are almost under pressure by millionaire coaches to get their students passed?
Not in public schools.
No. I'm a former coach, and I coach girls softball. I coach boys basketball, and I stayed on them academically.
Good for you guys. I just find it hard to believe that the rest of the population is like that. I
No.
won't believe it, because when a coach, you're paying a football coach $5 or $10 million a year, and one of his star students can't play football because his grades aren't up. Some of the heat's going to fall on the teacher, and it's not fair.
Now, one of the things,
you can't tell me that doesn't exist.
One of
Well,
the
that's
things,
at like Division I colleges, but I will say,
It doesn't matter where it is. It shouldn't exist. I don't care what college. My point
I'm not
is,
saying
it
that
shouldn't
it's like,
be like that.
okay,
What-
whatever.
one
Okay.
one of the things that happens at the college level is the college coach is evaluated on how many of the students graduate college.
Yes.
That's how they evaluate. It used to be how many games you won, but now they evaluate coaches according to how many kids graduate. And so what they do now is they get, let's take a football team. You can have 100 kids. They may get 10 of them that are superstars and not good in school, but that other 90, they're all academic, and they're helping out those 10 to make sure that they make it through.
I hope you're
So
right.
so no, they've changed that. And I was pleased to hear that the preference was academics, because you're absolutely right. Most people do not make it professionally. They just don't make it. And so,
hoops and dreams.
yeah, that's one of the adjustments that was made. And so unless somebody would like to say something else or add another question, this may be a good time to close. Like I said before, every Thursday, we're here. If you want to get a special invite, because I got something from Zoom that said that I shouldn't invite people that way because people will crash the party. I'm kind of hoping people will crash the party.
There's only three of us, but
So
nobody will get a chance to talk. I bet you if there's way too many people.
No, I'll just mute them. But you can always send me an email at moreinfo@quarantineracism.com, and I'll make sure you get an invite every week. Okay. And so I want to thank you, Ms. Hart, and I want to thank you, Mr. Richard. You all have a great evening. I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care. Be safe. Be well. Use your turn signals. Nobody else does.
You too. Thank you. All right.
Bye.